When 8-year-old Zaire knocked on the mansion door that December night, he had no idea his simple request would expose the ugliest truth about privilege and create the most beautiful miracle anyone had ever witnessed. Have you ever been so desperate that you had to swallow your pride and ask a stranger for help? Have you ever felt invisible in a world that seems designed to overlook people like you? Have you ever wondered if miracles really happen to kids who look like you, who live where you live, who struggle like you struggle? This is the story of how one child's unshakable faith collided with one woman's bitter cynicism and changed everything. But what happened next will challenge everything you think you know about who deserves miracles, who gets second chances, and what real wealth actually looks like. Before we get into this incredible story, I need you to do me a huge favor. If stories like this one, stories about hope, resilience, and the power of believing, if these stories matter to you, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what you're about to hear will stay with you long after this video ends. And you'll want to be here for more stories that prove miracles aren't just for fairy tales. Now, let me take you back to East Cleveland, December 23rd, 2023. Snow falling heavy, temperatures dropping fast, and most families getting ready for Christmas morning. But in apartment 4B of the Riverside Projects, there was no Christmas tree, no presents waiting, and definitely no food in the refrigerator. 8-year-old Zaire Baptiste sat by the window, watching his breath fog up the glass. His mom Octavia was in the hospital with pneumonia, and he hadn't eaten anything real in 2 days. The neighbors tried to help, but everybody was struggling. The heat had been cut off 3 days ago. Most kids would cry. Most kids would give up. Most kids would wait for someone else to fix their problems. But Zaire wasn't most kids. He made a decision that night that would shake the foundation of Cleveland's wealthiest neighborhood, expose the ugly face of racism and privilege, and prove that sometimes the smallest hands can move the biggest mountains. What he did next defied every rule about staying in your lane, knowing your place, and accepting that some doors aren't meant for kids like him. Are you ready to see what happens when pure faith meets pure wealth? Because trust me, you're not prepared for this. Let me tell you about two people living in the same city, breathing the same air, but existing in completely different worlds. First, there's Zaire Baptiste. 8 years old, 4 feet tall, with eyes that sparkle like he knows something the rest of the world forgot. Zaire lives in apartment 4B of the Riverside Projects in East Cleveland, where the elevator hasn't worked in 6 months and the heat comes and goes like a fair-weather friend. His mom, Octavia, she's a warrior. Every morning at 5 a.m., she's out the door heading to her first job cleaning office buildings downtown. By noon, she's at the grocery store stocking shelves. Come evening, she's serving tables at a diner that smells like grease and broken dreams. 3 jobs, 16-hour days, and still can't keep the lights on consistently. The refrigerator in their apartment tells a story no child should know. Ketchup packets from fast food restaurants, a half-empty jar of peanut butter, and on good days, maybe some bread that's only slightly stale. The counter is covered with red envelopes, final notices, eviction warnings, past due bills that pile up like autumn leaves. Zaire's father? He vanished when Zaire turned 5, leaving behind nothing but empty promises and a son who still asks when daddy's coming home. But here's what's remarkable about this kid. He wakes up every morning believing today will be better than yesterday. He helps elderly Mrs. Johnson carry her groceries. He shares his free school lunch with kids who have even less. He finds 4-leaf clovers in the concrete cracks and gives them to anyone having a bad day. Now, 15 miles away in Shaker Heights, there's another story entirely. Vivian Ashworth sits in her custom wheelchair, staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows of her 47,000-square-foot mansion. At 42, she built a tech empire that revolutionized online security, making her worth $2.3 billion. Her house has 12 bedrooms, 9 bathrooms, a movie theater, and an indoor pool she hasn't used in 3 years. 3 years ago, Vivian was skiing in Aspen, racing down the slopes like she raced through boardrooms, fearless, aggressive, unstoppable. One patch of ice, one moment of miscalculation, and her world flipped upside down. The doctors used words like permanent and adjustment and new reality. The accident stole her legs, but it took something deeper, her faith in possibilities. Her daughter Celeste calls once a month out of obligation, conversations that last exactly 4 minutes and feel like dental procedures. Her sister Cordelia visits to discuss family business, but her eyes never meet Vivian's face, always focused somewhere over her shoulder. The staff, cook, housekeeper, personal assistant, they do their jobs with professional distance, treating her like an expensive piece of furniture that needs maintenance. Vivian has everything money can buy, but nothing that makes life worth living. She's surrounded by luxury, but drowning in loneliness. Her days blend together like watercolors in rain. Morning medication, physical therapy she barely participates in, business calls that feel meaningless, and nights spent wondering if this is all that's left. 2 people. One has nothing but believes in everything. The other has everything but believes in nothing. One lives in community where neighbors share their last dollar. The other lives in isolation where money can't buy what she needs most. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt stuck between worlds like this? Maybe you've been the one with nothing, looking up at windows you'll never sit behind. Or maybe you've been the one with everything, realizing that success can be the loneliest prison of all. Drop a comment and let me know, because this story is about to show us that sometimes the person with the least has the most to give. December 23rd, 2023. Cleveland wakes up to the kind of snowstorm that makes the evening news. 8 inches already on the ground, temperatures plummeting to 15 below zero, and the city's about to get hit with another 6 inches before midnight. For most families, this means hot chocolate, warm blankets, and maybe a snow day. For Zaire Baptiste, it means his mom Octavia collapsed at work and got rushed to Cleveland General with pneumonia. The call came at 3 p.m. from a nurse who found Octavia's emergency contacts scribbled on a piece of paper in her purse. Your mother is stable, but she needs to stay here for observation. Is there an adult who can pick you up? Zaire told them his grandmother would come, but Grandma Rose lived in Alabama and hadn't been able to visit since losing her job last spring. So he hung up the phone and stood in that cold apartment, listening to the wind rattle windows that needed replacing 3 winters ago. Mrs. Johnson next door? Her heat got shut off yesterday. The Martinez family upstairs? They moved out last week after the eviction. Even the church food pantry was closed until after Christmas. That's when Zaire made a decision that would change 2 lives forever. He bundled up in his too small winter coat, pulled on boots with holes that let in snow, and walked 15 blocks through the storm to Shaker Heights. Because he remembered something his mom always said, "Baby, rich folks throw away more food than poor folks ever see." By the time he reached Vivian's neighborhood, his lips were blue and his fingers couldn't feel the gate he pressed his face against. The mansion looked like something from a movie, every window glowing warm, circular driveway cleared of snow, probably more rooms than his entire apartment building. The security camera spotted him before he even reached the front door. The intercom crackled to life. "This is private property. You need to leave immediately." Zaire looked up at the camera with snow in his eyelashes. "Ma'am, I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to make a trade." Vivian Ashworth wheeled closer to the monitor in her living room. She hadn't had an unexpected visitor in months. "A trade? What kind of trade?" "Well," Zaire said, his breath creating clouds in the freezing air, "I figured you probably got food you can't finish, maybe leftovers and stuff. And I got something you might need." Vivian almost deleted the security footage right there. Another sob story, another hand stretched out for charity. But something about this kid made her pause. What exactly do you have that I could possibly need? Zaire smiled, and even through the grainy security camera, his joy was unmistakable. A miracle, ma'am. I can help you walk again. The silence stretched so long that Zaire wondered if the intercom stopped working. Then Vivian started laughing. Not the warm kind of laughter, the sharp, bitter kind that cuts like broken glass. Kid, do you have any idea how much money I've spent on doctors? Physical therapists? Experimental treatments? And you think you can just show up here and fix what Harvard Medical School couldn't? Yes, ma'am, Zaire replied simply. I do. The laughter died. Vivian stared at the monitor, studying this small boy who stood in her driveway like he belonged there. What could a kid like you possibly do for someone like me? Love you, Zaire said without hesitation. Pray with you. Believe in you when you stop believing in yourself. My Sunday school teacher says miracles happen when people care about each other more than they care about being right. For 3 years, Vivian had heard every medical explanation, every statistical probability, every reason why she'd never walk again. But nobody, not one person, had ever offered her something as simple and as powerful as belief. She pressed the button that opened her gates. You've got 5 minutes, kid. Then you're going home with a bag of groceries, and this conversation never happened. But as Zaire walked up that long driveway, both of them knew this conversation would change everything. Here's what I want to know. Have you ever had a moment where someone believed in you when you couldn't believe in yourself? Or maybe you were the one offering hope to someone who had given up. Share your story in the comments, because what happened next proves that faith isn't about being logical, it's about being human. That first night, Vivian gave Zaire exactly what she promised, a bag of groceries and 5 minutes of conversation. But she didn't promise herself anything about not being curious. The next day, December 24th, he showed up again. Same torn boots, same too small coat, same impossible smile. This time he brought a small notebook and a pencil worn down to barely 2 inches. What's that for? Vivian asked through the intercom. I'm keeping track of your progress, Zaire announced. Day 1, you opened the door. Day 2, we're going to try something new. She let him in, telling herself it was Christmas Eve and she was just being decent. He sat cross-legged on her marble floor like it was grass in a park, pulled out his notebook, and wrote. Day 2. Miss Vivian's still beautiful when she smiles. I'm not smiling, she protested. You are on the inside, he said confidently. Can I try something? My grandma Rose taught me about healing hands before she moved away. Before Vivian could object, Zaire was gently placing his small hands on her legs, just above her knees. His touch was warm, careful, completely unafraid. For 3 years, physical therapists had moved her legs like mechanical parts. Zaire touched them like they still belonged to a real person. Tell me about before, he said softly, his hands moving in small, gentle circles. What did you love doing? Running, Vivian admitted. I used to run every morning at sunrise. 5 miles through the park, rain or shine. What else? Dancing. I took ballroom lessons every Tuesday night. My instructor said I had natural rhythm. Zaire grinned. See? Your legs remember being happy. They just forgot how to show it. Every day after that, he appeared at her door. Sometimes he brought stories from the projects. How Mrs. Rodriguez shared her last can of soup with the family upstairs. How the teenagers shoveled snow for elderly neighbors without being asked. How everyone looked out for everyone else even when they had nothing to give. You know what's funny? Zaire said one afternoon, his hands working their gentle magic on her legs. Poor people worry about each other. Rich people worry about money. But you got all the money already, so what you worried about? Vivian had to think about that. I guess. I worry about being forgotten. About not mattering anymore. That's silly, Zaire said matter-of-factly. You matter to me. You matter to your daughter who calls, but doesn't know what to say. You matter to all those people who could use your help, but don't know how to ask. For the first time in 3 years, Vivian actually laughed, not the bitter kind, but the kind that starts in your chest and bubbles up like spring water. Zaire started reading to her from library books he checked out with his expired card. Adventure stories, mysteries, comics he borrowed from school friends. His voice brought life to those empty rooms that had been silent too long. "Miss Vivian," he said during their second week together, "when's the last time you called your daughter?" "Celeste calls me," Vivian replied defensively. "That's not what I asked. When did you last call her?" The answer was never. Not since the accident. Pride, shame, and stubbornness had built walls higher than her mansion gates. That evening, Vivian dialed her daughter's number for the first time in 3 years. "Mom, is everything okay? Did something happen?" "I just wanted to hear your voice," Vivian said. "And to tell you I'm sorry. For shutting you out. For making you feel like you had to choose between checking on me and living your own life." The conversation lasted 43 minutes. They talked about Celeste's new job, her boyfriend, the vacation she'd been afraid to mention. They made plans for New Year's dinner. Something else started happening too. During Zaire's visits, while he worked his small hands over her legs and told her about his day, Vivian began feeling something. Not movement, exactly, but warmth. Tiny jolts of sensation she hadn't experienced since the accident. Her physical therapist noticed the change immediately when Vivian called to restart her sessions. "Your muscle tone has improved dramatically," Dr. Martinez observed. "What have you been doing differently?" "I've been remembering what hope feels like," Vivian answered. By New Year's Day, she could feel Zaire's touch clearly. By mid-January, she was experiencing sharp sensations all the way down to her toes. The medical team couldn't explain it. The specialists ran every test imaginable. But Zaire just smiled and made another note in his little book. Day 32. Miracles don't need explanations. They just need believers. Tell me something. Have you ever experienced the healing power of unconditional love? Maybe someone saw potential in you when you couldn't see it yourself, or you were the one who refused to give up on someone else. Share your story below, because what we're about to see next proves that miracles aren't magic, they're love in action. Good news travels fast, but gossip travels faster. By February, word had spread through Shaker Heights like wildfire. The tech billionaire who hadn't been seen in public for 3 years was suddenly taking walks in her garden. Neighbors spotted her through the tall gates, moving her wheelchair to different positions, sometimes even shifting her weight like she was trying to stand. And there was always that little black boy from the east side, coming and going like he owned the place. "It's just not right," whispered Margaret Henley at the country club. "A child that age, spending so much time with a vulnerable woman. Where's the supervision? Where's the protection?" "I heard his mother is some kind of scam artist," added Patricia Vanderbilt, stirring sugar into her coffee with practiced disdain. "You know how they operate. Find a lonely, wealthy person and exploit their emotions." "Someone needs to look into this before it goes too far," Margaret concluded. Poor Vivian probably doesn't even realize she's being manipulated. The whispers multiplied. Social media posts started appearing with blurry photos taken through the mansion gates. Reddit threads analyzing this suspicious relationship. Local news stations began making inquiries about unusual activity at the Ashworth estate. But the loudest voice of concern came from inside Vivian's own family. Cordelia Ashworth Peterson hadn't spoken to her sister in 8 months, but she appeared at the mansion door on a Tuesday morning with a folder full of printed articles and a list of demands. "Vivian, we need to talk. Now." "Hello to you too, Cordelia," Vivian replied, noting how her sister's eyes swept the living room like she was cataloging evidence. "Do you have any idea what people are saying? About you and this situation? You mean about me getting better?" About me actually having hope for the first time in 3 years. Cordelia slammed the folder on the coffee table. About you being taken advantage of by a family of con artists. Look at this, Vivian. Social media posts calling you naive. News outlets asking questions about your mental competency. Board members wondering if you're fit to make business decisions. Zaire is 8 years old, Vivian said quietly. Exactly. And where there's an 8-year-old, there's usually an adult pulling the strings. His mother works 3 minimum wage jobs. They live in government housing. And suddenly they're best friends with a billionaire? Come on, Vivian. You're smarter than this. What exactly are you suggesting I do? Cut contact. Immediately. Get a restraining order if necessary. Protect yourself before this becomes a legal nightmare. That afternoon, Cordelia made calls. To family lawyers. To social services. To anyone who would listen to her concerns about an inappropriate relationship between a wealthy, disabled woman and a troubled child from the inner city. The investigation started within 48 hours. Zaire noticed the change immediately. Vivian seemed distant during his visit, distracted. Her hands shook when she tried to drink her tea, and she kept glancing toward the windows like she expected someone to be watching. Miss Vivian, did I do something wrong? He asked, his small face creased with worry. No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. Then why won't you look at me? That's when she told him about the investigation, about the questions people were asking, about the lawyers and social workers who might want to talk to him and his mother. Zaire went very quiet. When he finally spoke, his voice was smaller than she'd ever heard it. Do they think I'm bad? Oh, sweetheart, no. They think we're different, and that makes them scared. Different how? Vivian struggled to find words that wouldn't steal his innocence. Different colors, different neighborhoods, different amounts of money. But I like that we're different, Zaire whispered. Different is what makes us special. When Octavia got the call from Child Protective Services, her worst fears crystallized. 3 jobs, 16-hour days, years of struggling to provide for her son, and now someone was questioning her fitness as a mother because Zaire had found friendship with a woman who happened to be wealthy. Baby, I think we need to stop visiting Miss Vivian for a while, she told Zaire that night. But Mom, she needs me. She's getting better. I know, but some people don't understand. They think we want something from her. We do want something, Zaire said seriously. We want her to be happy. We want her to walk again. We want to be her family. That's not the kind of wanting they're worried about. The stress was devastating. Vivian's progress slowed, then stopped entirely. The warmth in her legs faded. The hope in her eyes dimmed. Zaire stopped smiling, stopped believing in miracles, stopped being the bright light that had brought 2 worlds together. Here's what I need you to think about. How many times have you seen genuine love destroyed by suspicion? How often do we let fear and prejudice poison something beautiful just because it doesn't fit our expectations? Drop a comment and tell me, when did you last check your own assumptions about who belongs where and why? Because what happened next would force an entire community to confront the ugliest parts of themselves. March 15, 2024. Cuyahoga County Family Court, Room 204. The hearing that would determine whether 8-year-old Zaire Baptiste could continue visiting Vivian Ashworth packed the courtroom beyond capacity. Local news crews lined the hallway. Ashworth and the Baptiste family poses any risk to the minor child, she announced. I want facts, not speculation. Evidence, not emotion. The prosecution, led by family attorney Richard Sterling, painted a picture of manipulation and improper influence. Your Honor, we have a vulnerable, isolated woman worth billions of dollars forming an unhealthy attachment to a child from an impoverished background. The power dynamic alone makes this relationship inappropriate. MS. Ashworth has no training in child psychology, no background checks, no supervision. This is a recipe for disaster. Sterling called his first witness, Dr. Patricia Holbrook, child psychologist. Children from low-income households are particularly susceptible to grooming behaviors, Dr. Holbrook testified. When a wealthy adult provides food, attention, and special treatment, it creates an unhealthy dependency. The child begins to believe they must provide something in return to maintain the relationship. And what might that something be? Sterling asked. Emotional labor far beyond what's appropriate for a child. False hope. Performing happiness to please the adult. In extreme cases, we see children taking responsibility for adult emotional needs. Cordelia Ashworth Peterson took the stand next, her voice shaking with what appeared to be genuine concern. My sister has always been strong, independent, brilliant. The Cleveland Plain Dealer published an editorial questioning whether wealth disparity made genuine friendship impossible. Social media exploded with theories about long-term financial schemes. Octavia watched the coverage from her living room, tears streaming down her face. Every news report made her look like a calculating predator who had used her innocent son as bait. Her boss at the diner asked her to take indefinite leave until the situation resolved. The grocery store manager said customers were complaining. Even at church, people whispered when she walked by. Mom, why is everyone so mad at us? Zaire asked that night, curled up on the couch beside her. Because they don't understand love when it doesn't look like what they expect, Octavia replied, holding him tight. Are we bad people? No, baby. We're just different people. And sometimes different scares folks more than it should. The next morning, Octavia made the hardest decision of her life. She called her sister in Atlanta. Denise, I need to bring Zaire down there for a while. Just until this mess dies down. What mess, Octavia? You're scaring me. The mess where loving someone the wrong color makes you a criminal. But before they could leave Cleveland, the defense team called their witnesses. Dr. Ricardo Martinez, Vivian's neurologist, took the stand with 3 years of medical records and recent test results. I've been treating Ms. Ashworth since her accident, he testified. For 2.5 years, she showed no improvement. Zero sensation below the waist. No voluntary muscle response. No hope for recovery. Defense attorney Lisa Washington held up a chart. And then what changed? Beginning in late December 2023, Ms. Ashworth began reporting sensations. Tingling. Warmth. By February, she was demonstrating measurable muscle response. Her latest MRI shows nerve activity we haven't seen since before the accident. In your medical opinion, what caused this improvement? Dr. Martinez looked directly at Zaire, who sat between his mother and Vivian in the front row. I can't explain it medically, but the timeline corresponds exactly with when she began spending time with the Baptiste family. The defense played security footage from the mansion, weeks of recordings showing Zaire's gentle hands working on Vivian's legs, their conversations, her gradual improvement. The courtroom watched Vivian laugh for the first time in years. They saw her attempt to stand, supported by Zaire's encouraging voice. You can do it, Miss Vivian. I believe in you. When they called Zaire to testify, the 8-year-old walked to the witness stand with quiet dignity. Zaire, Lisa Washington said gently, can you tell the court why you visit Ms. Ashworth? Because she was sad, he replied simply. And I know what sad feels like. When you're sad and somebody loves you anyway, the sad starts going away. Did anyone tell you to ask her for money or gifts? No, ma'am. I asked her for food because I was hungry. She asked me what I could give her back. I said I could help her walk because that's what friends do. They help each other. What do you get from this friendship, Zaire? The boy thought for a moment. I get to see miracles happen. I get to love somebody who forgot how to love herself. I get to prove that God doesn't care what color you are or how much money you got. He just cares if your heart is working right. The courtroom fell silent. Even the protesters outside seemed to pause, as if the building itself held its breath. Judge Coleman looked at the evidence, the testimonies, The video footage of impossible medical recovery, and most importantly, at the faces of two people who had saved each other's lives. Judge Coleman was about to announce her decision when something extraordinary happened. Vivian Ashworth placed her hands on the armrests of her wheelchair and slowly, deliberately, began to push herself up. The courtroom gasped. Cordelia covered her mouth. Dr. Martinez leaned forward in disbelief. For 3 years, those legs had been lifeless. For 3 years, medical experts had used words like impossible and permanent. But as 200 people watched in complete silence, Vivian Ashworth stood up. Her legs shook. Her knees buckled slightly. But she stood. Zaire, she called softly across the courtroom. The 8-year-old looked at his mother, who nodded through her tears. He walked slowly toward Vivian, his eyes never leaving her face. Are you ready, Miss Vivian? I'm ready. 1 step. Wobbly, uncertain, but real. The courtroom held its breath. 2 steps. Stronger now, more confident. 3 steps. 4. 5. By the 6th step, Vivian was walking steadily across the courtroom toward the boy who had refused to stop believing in miracles. When she reached him, she knelt down and wrapped him in the tightest hug of his life. You did it, Zaire whispered. I knew you could. We did it, Vivian whispered back. We did it together. Judge Coleman wiped tears from her eyes before speaking. Case dismissed. This court finds no evidence of exploitation or inappropriate conduct. What we've witnessed today is the power of human love in its purest form. The transformation was complete, but it was just the beginning. Within 6 months, Vivian had regained full mobility. Not just walking, but running, dancing, living. Her first 5K run in 4 years made national news, with Zaire cheering at the finish line wearing a shirt that read, "Miracle Worker in Training." But the real miracle was what happened next. Vivian established the Zaire Baptiste Foundation, dedicated to connecting isolated wealthy individuals with families in need. Not charity, genuine friendship. Not pity, mutual support. The foundation's motto, written in Zaire's 8-year-old handwriting, read, "Love don't care about your address." Octavia became the foundation's first director, finally able to quit her 3 jobs and focus on building bridges between communities that had never spoken to each other before. The Shaker Heights neighborhood changed too. Margaret Henley started volunteering at East Cleveland schools. Patricia Vanderbilt began hosting financial literacy classes for single mothers. Even Cordelia apologized publicly and joined the foundation's board. The foundation's first year connected 50 families across Cleveland. Lonely elderly millionaires found purpose mentoring young entrepreneurs. Isolated disabled individuals discovered healing through service. Kids from the projects learned that rich people weren't their enemies, just people who had forgotten how to be human. Zaire became the foundation's youngest consultant, teaching adults what he'd always known. Love isn't about what you have, it's about what you're willing to share. 5 years later, the foundation operates in 12 cities. Vivian runs marathons. Zaire, now 13, still visits every week, helping other people discover their own miracles. The court case that almost tore them apart became the catalyst for healing an entire community. But here's what I want you to remember from this story. Miracles aren't magic tricks performed by special people. They're what happens when we choose love over fear, hope over cynicism, connection over isolation. So let me ask you this. Who in your life needs a miracle? Who have you written off as impossible to reach, too different to understand, too broken to heal? Share this story with someone who needs to remember that miracles are still possible. Hit that subscribe button if you believe love can change the world. And drop a comment telling me about a time when someone refused to give up on you. Because the truth is, we're all just walking each other home. And sometimes, the person who looks least like us is exactly who we need to complete the journey. Today, Zaire Baptiste is 16 years old, honor roll student, and youth ambassador for the foundation that bears his name. He still believes in miracles because he's lived one. Vivian Ashworth runs the Boston Marathon every year on the anniversary of their first meeting. She's engaged to a physical therapist she met during her recovery, and they're adopting 2 children from the foster care system. The Zaire Baptiste Foundation has facilitated over 3,000 cross-community friendships, proving that healing happens when we stop seeing differences as barriers and start seeing them as bridges. But here's the real lesson from this story. You don't need billions of dollars to change someone's life. You don't need medical degrees to heal broken hearts. You don't need perfect circumstances to create miracles. You just need to see people, really see them, and choose love over fear. Somewhere in your community, there's a Vivian, isolated, wealthy, forgotten. Somewhere else, there's a Zaire, struggling, hopeful, invisible. Your job isn't to fix their problems. Your job is to connect their hearts. Be the bridge. Be the believer. Be the miracle someone else is praying for. Because at the end of the day, we all need the same thing. Someone who refuses to give up on us. Now go make some miracles.